James.
Raf.
Fifth. We came fifth in trivia.
Oh, yeah. Pub trivia. 5th out of 9, I think.
Yeah, so right in the middle. Coming fourth at the halfway mark. We actually did really well in the second half, so I don't know how we slipped a place. I suspect maybe the bonus point for the beer tasting might have cost us. But nonetheless, I guess 2-person group, 5th, without the bonus, you take it.
You would take it. And it's probably worth noting that, we weren't doing pub trivia for the thrill of it. We weren't doing pub trivia to prove anything.
No.
We weren't doing pub trivia to have fun.
No.
We were doing pub trivia to distract ourselves and sort of dull the pain
of the 25 basis point increase in interest rates from the Bank of Japan.
That's right. And I think it's fair to say chaos in Japanese markets.
The yen to USD.
The yen to USD exchange rate. The dramatic decline in stocks like SoftBank and Nintendo.
Mm-hmm. Anything not to think about that.
Literally anything not to think about that is why we were playing pub trivia before recording the podcast. And, the past 2 years, we've questioned the fact that we record the podcast on a Monday.
Yep.
And that's been sort of unyielding for the entire time we've been recording.
It's been really annoying that we basically don't get 3 days of analysis because we're the first in the world to comment on anything that's happened over the past kind of 90 hours.
We record literally before US markets are open on a Monday, which means, but I would go so far as to say almost every single week we record the podcast and then the next day there's been some momentous announcement or whatever that renders most of what we talked about moot. But
and even analysis that I'll say a bunch of shit, and then the days after we record, and sometimes between us recording and releasing it, there'll be like a plethora of analysis, and I listen to it, I'm like, oh god, smart people are saying a bunch of things. What did I say? And then we release a podcast. I'm like, okay. Oh no, okay.
That's okay. No, you know what? I was 60% of the way there. That's what you were listening to this podcast for. But just to put a line in the sand, when we recorded this podcast, the Japanese markets were in disarray. The ASX had its worst single day since March 2020. The US markets were not open yet, but pre-market trading suggested
bloodbath.
Things weren't going to look good for most of it, but particularly tech stocks. So, but keep in mind that none of that had actually happened. So, but by the time you listen to this on Wednesday, we could be in a second GFC or nothing has happened. And I just want to be incredibly clear, we will not be making any predictions either way.
Anyway, it's earnings seasons, folks.
It's earnings season.
We should probably say, for those who don't know what earnings season is, publicly listed companies on the stock market have to provide all of their financials, basically, open their books every 3 months. Simple as that. And it kind of happens over a two-week period, 2 to 3 week period.
It all clusters in. So as a result, we get a bunch of tech earnings, usually in around the same time, which give you a bit of a sense of what are the big themes going on in tech right now. And you may notice we haven't really done quarterly. I mean, we've definitely covered quarterly earnings on Downrant, but we haven't really done a bundle of them where we do a omnibus, where we talk about a bunch of different companies at once. But the reason we decided to do it now is that there are a few kind of like common themes there, which may tie into GFC 2 or nothing. Depending on what happens in between us recording this and publishing it. Don't hold us against it. Hold against us. But there's a few little bits and pieces that'll be relevant in either the bull or bear case.
Yeah.
A few things popped up that I think are worth talking about. Foregrounding a few items, just so you know.
Yeah.
Basically, every major tech company, whether it be Alphabet or Microsoft or Amazon or Apple, less so Apple, Meta, big theme across all of these companies was they are spending an insane amount of money.
Yes.
Far more than they were in previous quarters. far more than has been expected from them in the past. For example, Microsoft's spending CapEx was up like 70% from the previous quarter.
And very quickly, CapEx, capital expenditure, buying shit that you expect to use over the next, few years.
Yep.
I.e. not salaries and stuff like that, like investing in something.
Yep. Meta's like full year capital expenditure was up to like $40-something billion.
Yeah, they didn't get punished.
They didn't get punished, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
But the point, and this is the theme that's going to run through. We're going to talk about a few other little bits and pieces, but the theme that you're going to pick up through all the stuff that we talk about is that companies are spending a profligate amount of money, and what are they spending it on? AI.
That's right, folks. So we may be having GFC 2 or nothing.
Or nothing.
Or like a swift rebound on Wednesday.
Like a slight correction on the road to Jerusalem. And Jerusalem here is AGI.
But the Down Around boys are talking about AI again. God damn.
Oh my God, fuck! Actually, I got feedback last week from someone that was like, a loyal listener. He's probably going to hate hearing me describe him that way. But he was like, boys, can you cool a little bit on the AI episodes? And I had to say, look, fortunately or unfortunately, it's the only game in town. And I think this earnings season really underscores it in the regard that it's like their entire sort of like raison d'etre as companies in Silicon Valley is we are spending an insane amount of money to build up our capacity for some computing future that we kind of see hazily through the mist.
Yeah.
But it's not here.
If we don't do it, then we're doomed. Like if we don't spend a bunch of money right now to set us up for the AI future, then our business is basically kaput.
Yeah.
So,
this was the quote from Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Alphabet and CEO of Google. He said the risk of underspending is significantly greater than the risk of overspending.
Yeah.
That's what he told analysts. Because we talked about this a few weeks ago when we did like a bit of an AI skeptic episode, or CapEx, the amount of money that's being spent on this versus the revenue and the returns. And this kind of continues that thesis because all of the institutional investors, the big investors, are in their kind of like show me the money phase. They're like, we've heard you prattle on about AI and like what you're building these data centers
And in fact, 12 months ago, we pumped all of our money into you.
Yep.
Because you were prattling on about it.
We invested in you. We invested in NVIDIA because NVIDIA is your primary vendor in furnishing these data centers and doing whatever. But you haven't actually given us any products yet. You've given us some cool stuff, don't get me wrong, but you haven't given us a revenue-generating product that we can look at and say, hell yes, this is what you're building. And this,
caveat, I'm just going to caveat it because the Microsoft Defender has logged in.
Yeah.
I think that Copilot for Office 365 is a product that is going to generate significant amount of revenue moving forward. So just flagging that. But otherwise, yes, I understand. Like, okay, you're throwing so much money at these data centers and buying all these graphics cards, and you basically like as many NVIDIA chips as we can buy, we need to buy just in case. How are you going to make money out of them? Yes, is now the question. How are you going to make money out of all of these chips?
I think the one company that's kind of pitched at least some version of this is actually probably Apple. Like Apple has the most legible pitch for we are putting Apple Intelligence and like these, enhanced Siri, weird like writing tools. Yes, some image generation crap, but we're kind of putting it front and center on our phones. It's only appearing on the iPhone 14 and later. So we're kind of putting a sort of a foot up the arse of the people who haven't upgraded yet. This is like a really clear pitch to investors of how we're going to make money from AI. Yeah. And they were actually rewarded in their earnings.
Well, yeah, briefly, but they're now down.
They're now in pre-trading, down 10%. But maybe it's a correction, maybe it's the end of the world. Again, I do not take a strong view on any of this.
We do not take a strong view on the yen carry trade.
No. I don't understand what they're doing over there.
Let's go through them. Let's go through a few of the companies, especially the ones that got smashed. And, it's not all to do with AI, but
it's the big thing.
Yeah, it's a big theme, and like the size of the corrections are kind of quite remarkable. There's a bunch of, let's say, bearish signals. I know people don't like the terms bull and bear, but it makes sense.
They like them fine.
So Amazon Amazon down like 8%, something like that. But that was also soft e-commerce numbers.
Well, I mean, Amazon is the one where it's like they are spending big on the CapEx side of things as well. Like they're building up their capacity.
Yeah. And they kind of, part of their earnings was like, they were like, oh yeah, we're actually making a loss on our AI compute right now. Because again, it's like this kind of arms race where Amazon, and ignoring their e-commerce for a second, we're talking about like cloud provider like AWS. AWS, Google, Microsoft are basically the big three when it comes to cloud compute. At the moment, basically, they need to be able to provide to their customers the ability to do your own run your own models and run your own inference and blah, blah, blah on NVIDIA graphics cards. You need to be able to do AI on their servers. And so Amazon apparently, well, they said they're running a loss on their AI stuff right now, which seems kind of crazy. It's like, why do that? It's like, well, why do that? They need their customer. What they don't want their customers to do is go, I could run my AI stuff on AWS, which is where I already am, but it's way cheaper to run it on. Amazon are worried that, okay, sure, you're on AWS right now, but if you can get graphics card GPU compute for much cheaper from CoreWeave, for example, then maybe you do your AI stuff with CoreWeave, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, I kind of like this platform, blah, blah, blah. You might end up leaving AWS. So you have this situation where, the Microsofts and the Googles and the AWS of the world are actually like losing money on selling this AI compute to, various customers who want to be giving this thing a go, which is like, once again, is kind of like all of the money seems to just trickle to NVIDIA.
Yeah. I mean, Amazon are in a weird position where they have not done anything flashy in AI. Like they've not come out with. They've been working on their own like internal AI models and LLMs and stuff, but they haven't come out with like a Copilot or like a chat bot or whatever.
They have Amazon Q.
Yeah,
I mean, it's not really.
It's not really anything. But they very clearly, like Andy Jassy, who's the Amazon CEO, his like position is clearly like, we want the AI revolution to happen on AWS in exactly the same way that kind of like the cloud revolution happened on AWS, and everyone had to catch up to us in terms of like Google Cloud, Azure. These were all plays to, because AWS was an insanely good bet, which Andy Jassy ran.
Yeah,
that's the whole basically the reason he became Jeff Bezos' successor is because he was the AWS guy.
Yeah,
best bet Amazon made, aside from the fact that people might like to buy books online.
Yeah, people might like to get to buy things online and get it delivered very quickly.
Delivered quite quickly. Wonderful bet. But yeah, they are kind of, if you had to say any of these companies who appears to be visibly the most quote-unquote behind on AI, you might reasonably say Amazon, if only because they haven't had anything to show for it.
Yeah.
But it is worth saying that like the entire time that Amazon has been a company, it has been a huge amount of investment while they don't make a huge amount of money.
Yeah.
Then they flick the switch and make more money than God.
Yeah.
Then they kind of oscillate back to not making a huge amount of money while they build up some new business model. Then all of a sudden they're making an insane amount of money again.
Yeah, I want to put a hold on that, because I think that does actually speak to the bigger theme that's worth talking about in this episode, which is like short-termism versus long-termism. But I also will say that and divert from that to say that to a certain extent, the AWS bet could be that, okay, if there are models like Llama that are open source or Minstrel or whatever, we don't need to have our own friggin' frontier model. All we need to do is enable our customers to have the compute.
Give them as much compute as they want at good prices.
Exactly. They can plug in any of these kind of open source things they want and, just run it on their services, and we don't really need to do anything other than say you can do that.
True. Although, they are making some parallel bets there. Like they invested $4 billion into Anthropic.
Anthropic, yeah.
Which is, whichever way you slice it, a pretty chunky bit of money to put behind a startup.
And I should say also, just personal little anecdote, speaking of Amazon Q, which is their internal kind of co-pilot thing, I was using Amazon QuickSight, which is a data visualization tool within AWS the other day. Full Amazon style. And it's you can now use Amazon Q to use natural language to ask it to make a visualization for you, like a chart for you. And I was like, oh, great. Okay. So I was typed in some...
Make me a fucking visualization.
Yeah, I was project revenue the next 3 months. It's can't do that. So, okay, show me revenue for the last 3 months. Can't do that. And then it's like classic Amazon style. Here's a link to like all of the kind of things you can ask. And it's just basically a big table and a list of the prompts that you can ask it, which are very specific.
Yeah.
And like basically it's like, what? This is not natural language AI. This is like basically coding. Like why wouldn't I just use friggin' SQL or whatever if I have to ask like in this very specific way how to make a chart I can drag and drop a chart?
That is some classic Amazon gear.
Thank you, Amazon.
We're going to give you phenomenal amounts of like performance and output and whatever, but these are the rules you must abide by, and this is the fucked web form you must use.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. But the other part about the Amazon thing is they're trying to triangulate this sort of stuff. But as you mentioned before, their results show that their e-commerce business, which for like 99% of people is what they think of when they think of Amazon. You know, big warehouses full of goods that get shipped overnight to various locations or
my house.
Exactly. Customers is soft.
Yeah.
And like they are, I'm not going to say getting their lunch eaten by platforms like Temu and Alibaba and
it's having an impact,
but it's having a huge impact.
Yeah.
To the point that like, you know, in the air is the rumors that they are kind of moving down market and wanting to establish a platform that looks a bit more like these Chinese budget delivery platforms, which is kind of like,
I mean, I don't know what hell that will look like.
I don't know what exactly. I mean, and you can kind of see it on Amazon proper. Like it has been cluttered with a lot of like ultra cheap crap.
Yeah. So there's that side of it, but then there's like the full gamification thing, right? You open Temu, and it's just like you can't do anything on Temu without it spinning a friggin' Wheel of Fortune thing that fake goes to try again first. Like I can't believe that the algorithms suggest. And sorry, if you don't know what I'm talking about, you open Temu, a wheel will pop up. Usually, it's different things. Sometimes it's a firecracker and there's all kinds of crap. But you can't start using it without an animation being like, you've basically won a prize or you have a chance at an insane prize. Typically,
and the prize is like 9% off a bath mat or something.
if you buy 10 items in the next 5 minutes, you get 40% off. But it has to be one of these 30 items. Yeah, this crap. But also like. Often it's, this Wheel of Fortune thing that spins around and around and around, and it slowly stops on the spin again, and then spins again, and then gives you whatever shit deal that you don't want. But it's like 15 seconds. It's like the opposite of Google, right? Where it's like, you just want to open the app and be like, I need a new bath mat. Or, you know, I need a basic thing that I want to buy for really cheap. And it's like, nah, you're going to have to sit through 20 seconds of animations that you cannot get out of, including me lying to you about this have another chance thing that happens every single freaking time. Like, I know it's not luck.
No, there is a really funny thing there where it's kind of like, you know, I guess you could say the Western model where it's like, we are just going to like insanely optimize, you know, you search for something and we want to provide you exactly what you want at that given moment based on your search and also a bunch of other signals you present to us. We're doing like a psychometric profile of you, and we have decided that you are going to buy this bath mat that costs $9. You know, it links up with your sort of thing. There's some sort of like enormous ad arbitrage network that has delivered this product to you. You know, and this is what they've built this entire thing on. But yeah, there's this weird countervailing world where it's like, people don't actually want that. What they want is Queen of the Nile.
Yeah.
They want, you know, you want flashing lights, bright colors, the feeling of victory.
Yeah, exactly. Whoa, you won. You get to choose from these 40 things you didn't want previously. You've got 3 minutes, and you've got to buy 10 of them. You just buy 10 of them, and you'll get 40% off. Some price that you've never really you don't know what the price is. Everything on Temu is supposedly 80% off.
And that will be delivered directly from some factory in Shenzhen.
Yeah, in 2 weeks. Yeah. But you did it. You did it.
Yeah. Which is just the complete antithesis of the Amazon model. Like this weird quasi-social shopping thing. I mean, you know, obviously there's other things that go into the Temu and Shein and all these kind of... This Chinese model of e-commerce.
Yeah.
But as a result, you know, it's having a measurable impact on the way that Amazon does business.
Yeah. I mean, I think that they can't be chasing that dragon. I feel like that's like... sorry, that's not a racist dragon. They can't be chasing.
You're actually picturing like a Western Game of Thrones type dragon, not like a Chinese dragon.
Like smoking a long pipe, like kind of dragon.
No. Talking about green lizard thing, scales.
Yeah. Breathing fire.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this kind of gear.
St. George fought this guy.
Like, kind of cuddled around like a bunch of gold in a cave.
Yeah, like the Welsh flag. That's the kind of dragon you're picturing. Anyway.
Because, I mean, the whole Amazon thing is... Well, firstly, they can't afford it. The whole thing with Temu is, obviously, they've got cheap warehousing in China. Some of this shit may be made on demand. I don't know. You know what I mean? There's like crap going on there.
There's some psycho stuff going on there.
There's some psycho stuff going on there. And the reason you're able to get it for $4 is that it takes 2 weeks to get here. And also, apparently, like, they've set their limits. You can't actually buy above these certain There's certain taxation limits where, like, you don't have to pay GST and import tax and import duty and blah, blah, blah.
They do some weird tax stuff. Like with everything, when you make an order from Temu, and you might order 20 items or something, if you're feeling like it.
We have to.
They're all
$40.
They're all individually wrapped.
Yeah,
and like so, it's some way to evade some sort of
there's some kind of import duty thing that they're doing,
and they do which is very different from like the Amazon model of like we have built a robot warehouse, out in Penrith or wherever the Amazon warehouses are in Sydney, and like it's as automated as possible. Every item possible is there, and like we've gotten it down to a complete art and science. You know, there is not a missed second in this delivery process.
Yeah,
and we've developed all these kind of like Uberish kind of ways of flexing out the delivery, so you will always get it next day. Yeah, which is very different to like. You may get this in 11 days, but it's going to feel like a prize once it gets it because of all of our fucking insane e-commerce stuff. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I don't know what the Amazon vision is for how they're going to tackle that low end of the market. Let's be honest, it is kind of like, and as we've talked about when we've talked about this stuff in the past, Temu is you're not buying high quality goods on there. No, but apparently in America there was more than 2 billion Temu deliveries to them in 1 year. Yeah, no, they've really they've figured something out about human psychology that you can't just like uber optimize in this kind of like dramatic Amazon way. And power to them. Anyway, but that's Amazon. They're getting crushed. In short, I don't know if they're getting crushed, but they're facing some. Oh, sorry. Their stock price. I think Amazon's going to be fine. Oh, they'll be fine. But it is an interesting hump for them as they face challenges from people that they probably never thought they were going to be challenged by on the e-commerce side, and then they are visible. They're not in front in terms of AI, although I think they probably they're doing okay. Basically. They're doing fine. Yeah, their stock price got crushed, and then people are talking about it. Anyway, So Apple getting crushed in pre-market, 7% down. As I said, who knows what will happen by the time this is released? But the big story was that the Oracle of Omaha. Yeah. Warren Buffett. So Berkshire Hathaway, who were single biggest Apple shareholder. I think they owned like nearly 10% of the company. Yeah, something like that. And it was like the single biggest position held by Warren Buffett's Berkshire Hathaway. He sold just before all this market mayhem, market bloodbath, whatever you want to call it, took place on the day that we recorded this pod. Berkshire Hathaway sold down half of their Apple share. So that's a huge amount. As I said, that's like 4% of Apple's outstanding shares. Sold them down, converted to cash. Who knows what's going on there? So there's a few ways you can interpret that if you want to think about that. So I think Berkshire Hathaway and Warren Buffett first took their position in Apple in like 2006. It was like one of their first technology stocks. Yeah, and they've built up that position over time. Warren Buffett's always been very, very positive about talking about Apple, and his sort of investment strategy. And you think about the way he thinks about companies. There are very few companies on the US stock markets where it's like an insane number of Americans, maybe the majority of Americans, interact with their products every single day. Multiple touch points, and it has proven to be a great investment. Since they first invested, it's multiplied. It was a good time to invest in Apple. Totally. Anyway, 20 years ago? Yes. Yeah. Like, if you can go back the best time to invest in Apple was 20 years ago. Yeah. The second best time, 21 years ago. Then 22, then 23. So people are kind of interpreting this in multiple ways. One, he read the tea leaves and saw what was about to happen. This is the Doomer sort of vision where, like, you know,
what does he know?
what did he saw that the markets were about to collapse,
And by he, like Berkshire Hathaway isn't just one 88-year-old bloke.
it's you know,
It's quite a large organisation.
it's a large organization with some real brainiacs in there.
Yeah.
You know,
R.I.P. to the Mung Dog.
R.I.P. Mung Bean. You know, R.I.P. to him, and you know, I hope there's somebody in Warren's life that's able to take his car keys away from him. He's too old to drive. So there's one thesis where it's like he saw all this coming, so he decided, I need holdings in cash. I cannot be holding all this stock. I need to convert. So there's that. The second one is that he looked at the Apple plans, executive leadership, growth trajectory, and was like, nah.
Yeah. The second thing was that he projected their 10-year revenue
And was like-
discounted future free cash flows over 10 years and was like, doesn't make sense.
Doesn't add up to me. And the third one is he was just like, it's our largest single position. We're too concentrated in this one stock.
Yeah.
We need to diversify a little bit. It could be all three.
Yeah.
To varying degrees, and probably is.
We don't know. But this is like the rational market, folks, is like Warren Buffett says he's selling, and somehow the biggest, depending on the day, company in the world is able to sell off 7% despite being worth nearly $3 trillion.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you can just fucking delete $270 billion like that. No worries.
Yeah, and people are still wrapping their heads around it because Apple's earnings last week were pretty good.
Yeah, fine, yeah.
The services revenue was up. China was
Some worries in China.
China was looking a bit soft, but also not as bad as people thought. You know, there was iPad as a category
iPads
was
are
doing
good.
really well.
Yeah.
You know, there's a few little, you know, and plus the fact what we talked about before, Apple's basically launching these AI features and saying this is only for future devices. Investors like that stuff. They were like, oh, hell yeah, we're getting, finally we've got a reason for people to upgrade their smartphones and keep that category kicking along for a while. Anyway,
So, you know, as we said, down 7% in pre-market. We've got like an hour and a half until the market's open. So again, by the time you're listening to this, could have rebounded. Could be the beginning of the end.
It could be the end. By the time this in this, Apple may not be a company. Again, I'm not making a strong view on whether that's true or not. So there's that.
But I think the big one. Let's briefly Meta. I think was interesting just because, like, as you said, Meta was like, we are spending an absolute shitload of money. Our capex is just going through the roof. We are spending so much, and which freaked investors out with a bunch of other companies saying the same thing.
Yep.
Except Meta also is just making so much money from ads. It's like, well, you know,
They bought themselves a bit of time.
Yeah.
Plus the fact that
like 26% increase in net profit. Like, whew, fuck, they're making a fair bit of cash.
they make a fair bit of cash. They also have the argument that other companies don't have, where they can sort of wave their hand and say, yeah, we're spending all this money on AI, but, you know, we use our AI models.
Yeah, we use it ourselves. Google kind of said the same thing. It's like, yeah, and like he literally, Sundar said this. It's like, yes, we're trying to sell Gemini, blah, 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 but also like we use this stuff for it to service ads.
Serve ads,
and exactly.
Reels algorithms.
Yeah.
You know, and they're probably, you know, they're cooking the books a little bit there in that, like, you know, Llama is not being used to serve ads, but they can claim, you know, when we build up data center capacity, we can deploy that straight away towards stuff that you guys know we are better than anyone in history at doing. We're good. So they've bought us a bit of time there, and good for them. Microsoft took a bit of a hit as well, even though cloud revenue was solid. Microsoft is still doing well, but their capex was again insane, and also like the demand for their services is really outstripping the capacity that they're building out.
Yeah.
So they're kind of behind on that, but at least it shows there's some demand there. Although there was some kind of interesting things there. Satya Nadella said, pretty simple message. He said to investors, we need to be spending this much to seize the AI moment. But CFO Amy Hood made a very funny line, which I think will probably be repeated a lot in some analyst notes, where she said, we expect this AI investment we're making right now to pay off over 15 years and beyond.
Yeah.
Which, you know, for any company, again, we're getting back to this sort of like short-termist versus long-termist view. Say what you will about quarterly capitalism. And many people have many complaints. The idea that, as you said at the beginning, every quarter you get up, you say your results, you say how things are going. It does lock you into a very short-term view, where if you're putting the stock price up, if your earnings look good in the short term, investors love you. But if it doesn't look good on the short term, they hate you, and there's not a whole lot of attitude. But especially in tech stocks, where, you know, the Magnificent Seven.
The Mag 7.
For decades, people have been talking about, if you want to make money quickly and you can't pick a fucking greyhound, you're not good down at the dish lickers.
They should have greyhounds in the Olympics. Another story, but sorry, as you were.
They should. And if they need a person, put a monkey on its back. Get a monkey on its back. That's a primate. You go into tech stocks to tell someone who's been
It's not a primate, but anyway, keep going.
Is it a monkey not a primate? I feel like a monkey's.
Oh, you're right. It's primate. Sorry.
You know, for someone who's been piling into fucking Apple or Meta or whatever, they don't want to wait 15 fucking years to see returns.
No, absolutely not.
So that was. I think that summarizes the whole thing, which is Amy Hood being like, look, in 15 years, you guys are going to be...
You're all investing for the long term, right?
Yeah, you're all long-term investors, right? You're all long.
You're not going to sell for another 15 years, surely.
So, what's the problem?
Don't get me wrong, that's how businesses should be built, in my opinion.
No, I agree.
But
they're
obviously, the reality is...
The reality is they're
You think the guys on Wall Street bets are thinking like... 15 years, fellas?
The accumulation of over 15 years? No, they're not thinking about that. But yeah, so... But
the big one, because short-term versus long-term is the thing. And I think Intel is the perfect exemplar of that juxtaposition.
Yeah.
That dialectic, if you will.
Sure.
Intel make computer chips. Microchips, you probably know them from, as we've said before, the reflective sticker on your laptop, your work-given laptop.
Oh, yeah. You see the Pentium 3? That's going back a bit, I think.
The i5.
The i5, the i7, the i3.
But, you know, chips, your processor. Intel were once one of the, if not the biggest company in the world at a certain point.
They built Silicon Valley.
Speaking of getting hammered, their stock price, I know it's very stock heavy, but, you know, you're with us here, folks. It speaks to a broader thing. What are the markets but just the will of all people? It's just conscious. It's human consciousness.
It's human consciousness reflected in price. Yeah. Absolutely.
And yeah, what is price but just opinion? And what is opinion but emotion?
What is price but information, you know?
It's humanity. It's raw humanity is what you see in the price of fucking Intel. So they got smashed down 30%. So this was on the back of Pat Gelsinger, their current CEO, who was also their former CEO of yesteryear, announcing A, numbers aren't looking so good. B, we're sacking between 15,000 and 20,000 people.
Yep.
And
keep in mind, this is a company that employs about 130, 140,000 people.
I mean, they've been having a tough time. There's a whole episode in it. We talked about it a little bit in our... Did we do a TSMC episode?
I can't remember. We've definitely brought up Intel.
Yeah.
I mean, put in a short way, like you probably know, because we talked about it in our microchip episode, chips are made in Taiwan and to a lesser extent South Korea. You know, America has lost the manufacturing capacity for chips.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Intel missed mobile. I think that's the key takeaway here. Intel's chips, which were great for big hulking computers and to a lesser extent laptops, but Intel make the chips in the laptops that die in 2.5 hours. Their battery dies. Since then, we've moved on. ARM, etc., mobile.
Yep. Apple got away from using Intel chips in their laptops.
Exactly. And Intel, it was literally like, they wanted to do a deal with Intel. Intel basically said, no. Apple said, we want you specifically to make this type of chip. Intel was like, no, we make our own chip. You either use it or you don't.
In short, they missed that and then have successfully missed 5 other revolutionary moments in chips.
Yes.
Now they're way behind. But Intel is like the perfect candidate for like the US CHIPS Act.
Exactly. So they've been getting a bunch of cash, part of the CHIPS Act. and they revolutionized their business. So their lunch got eaten a bit by TSMC. As I just said, Apple went to Intel, said, hey, this is kind of actually the chip we kind of want for our iPhone. Intel was like, nah, here's the chips we're making. That's a very dumb way of breaking it down, but it's basically what happened. So Apple went to TSMC, who are a fab. They don't make their own, they don't design their own chips, nothing like that. Intel designed them and build them full vertical integration, sell them, package them, whatever. Apple went to TSMC, who they're just a fab. We make whatever you tell us to make. So Apple got a bit of help from ARM, went to TSMC. Hey, here's the chip we'd like for our iPhone, please. TSMC, yeah, sure. That's what we do.
Yep.
Whatever you tell us to do, we do.
Yep.
Cool.
The era, as we talked about in the chipper, the era of fabulous design. Companies like Apple, who employ a lot of boffins and eggheads to design microchips, and they send them over to TSMC in Taiwan.
Yeah.
Whereas Intel was always in-house.
Yeah.
We design them, we make them. That turned out to be not the model for the future.
Exactly. And Intel, though, has decided we're going to start being a fab. And this is a big deal. They're like, we will make your chips. We're going to build the plants that build chips, which is not as we've discussed. This is not a cheap thing to do. Building microchips, building semiconductors is very, very, very expensive. Again, we've talked about ASML,
and that's before you even get to the expertise level and all the insane things that go into becoming a chip manufacturer.
Yeah. So Intel were like, nah, we're changing it up. Building for other people. They obviously don't have any customers yet, and it's still a plan. This is the kind of big strategic thing. Right now, the markets are saying that doesn't look like it's going very well.
You fucked this.
You've completely fucked this. And as well as apparently a couple of their more recent processors for computers have a corrosion problem or something, or an oxidization thing that's going on, and they're saying no, they're not faulty. It's this, that. And the other.
The estimate says to get Intel up to the level where it's operating at a TSMC level will probably cost $100 billion, which is just and keeping in mind we talked about this in our chip episode. Taiwan was making textiles, and then Morris Chang was like, we should make microchips. That should be our thing. This was the 1980s.
And the entire country basically pivoted
to doing that, to the point where now, they can't even grow fucking rice to feed their population.
No, because the water goes to cooling certain ASML machines.
The water goes, to cooling these multi-$100 million machines made by the duplicitous Dutch. And then, again, there's been we don't want to get into the lost in the weeds here, but the idea of replicating that in the US is just not going to happen. I'm sorry. This is a bizarre pipe dream.
It's a boondoggle. Let's be real, folks. You heard it here first on Down Round.
Just
you heard it here first.
Imagine trying to replicate the labor conditions of 1980s in Taiwan. Building up generations of people who are expert at this. The funny, we've mentioned it multiple times in Down Around, the idea of a guy who can tell from the hum of an ASML machine.
He's woken up in the middle of the night because the frequency
is slightly off, which suggests an 0.03% change in yield.
Exactly.
Anyway, so Intel is in...
And his whole family lives in the factory, by the way.
Yeah. And so Intel, maybe they'll end up somewhere and producing some sort of thing, but... they're struggling.
Right now, the markets are saying, that does sound great, but that sounds like that might be 15 years away. And I want to know how much I'm going to make next quarter.
I've already been told I have to wait 15 years for fucking Microsoft returns. Don't you fucking tell me. I have to wait for Intel as well. So there's that. And also parallel is probably worth mentioning because it's on the same page and we maybe should have mentioned before, but NVIDIA, briefly the most valuable company on earth, they're also facing problems. Pre-market trading, again, situation may have changed since the episode, down 10%. And NVIDIA has been oscillating insanely.
Oh, yeah. It's actually psycho that you can have a company that's worth between $2 and $3 trillion that just pops up by 8%, down 10%, up 7%. That is so much money.
That's just creating and destroying hundreds of billions of dollars worth of value. And
rational markets, folks.
Their current thing is they are behind on delivering their, what do they call the Blackwell chips.
Yeah.
Everyone we people have been theorizing for a while that NVIDIA was going to run into a wall from its like historic run, and that maybe their moat as a chip producer is not as wide as you think. One funny angle, which I think is true, is I saw someone tweet about this, like the fact that if you're someone who is a senior chip designer at NVIDIA, you are worth north of $50 million.
Yeah, that's true.
Like the most talented people, and probably like several strata of talent, like the kind of people who are sort of like, let's be honest, a little bit further down on the bell curve to the left.
Oh, but even if if you happen to have been working there for 10 years,
you've
got stock-based compensation.
You are richer than most people. You are in the top 0.5% of net worth on Earth. Are you really going to be giving it your all every day at the office? Are you going to be coming in?
If you just did if you did some kind of electrical engineering degree, or even some chemistry, you did some chemistry, and it happens to be like certain chemicals or whatever, and you happen to be really good at it, you're no longer in the labs. You run a team.
Yeah,
you've kind of worked your way up, and you've just been paid in this stock based compensation the entire way along, and you've got
you're fucking
60
about
mil.
You're worth $60 million.
Yeah, you're 55 years old.
You're fucking around. Let's be honest. You're fucking about a bit. It's like I remember I was thinking about this back when, it's a different thing, but back when we were in the first 6 months of COVID or whatever, and you heard that they were absolutely rushing the vaccines to get us out of lockdowns and return us to normality. I always found it very amusing to think about some guy who was working at the AstraZeneca vaccine labs and just sort of being on his computer and clicking around and reading Wikipedia and shit. Just opening up his group chat and chatting about while the world was waiting for him to develop shit.
Just finish sending an email and just being I might just pop onto Reddit.
just read Reddit for a while. The entire global economy had come to a halt. So I'm working on it.
Spend 90 minutes on his fantasy football team, just going through every single
Now
play.
Imagine that, but the guy's worth $50 million and he's trying to get these Blackwell chips off the ground. And that's why NVIDIA is down 10%. Pending. Situation may have changed.
Yeah, but okay, more broadly, one step back, the narrative is all your investment in AI actually going to pay off? As we've been kind of harping on about for a while, is this going to pay off? And also the Bank of Japan raised interest rates by 25 basis points. So the carry trade's all fucked up.
And now, as a result, Meta is down.
I got to say, final point, Meta not being down, well, I mean, by the time you're listening to this, who knows? But Meta being actually our CapEx is more than we thought. Our already absurd spend is slightly higher than we thought it would be. But our advertising is doing pretty well. And them not being hammered, despite the fact their CapEx, is the number one thing of the day. And also for them, it's probably the least clear exactly how they make money off generative AI. I suspect that Zuckerberg's swag, that might be worth $200 billion.
Oh, easily. Yeah, at the moment, he that necklace cost him $20,000 conservatively. But in terms of the value generated for Meta and sort of the aura that's kept that stock pumping, kept while they're asking the tough questions of Microsoft, they're like, brother, I trust you.
If you're listening to this, did you know there's another world out there where you get a second episode of Down Round a week?
Yep, it's called Down Round Premium.
That's right, and there's no interruptions.
No interruptions, no ads, 2 episodes a week, including the free one you're getting right now, plus another one.
Yep, $7 a month, not a week, a month, downround.net. Downround.net, instant access to the whole back catalogue as well. You've got so much to catch up on.
There's so much. Get around it.